So I have to say just at the top, hell yeah for today. Very, very excited to be speaking with Liam Regan today from Refused Films. Liam, thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm glad that the time's been able to work out this time. And I apologize for canceling so many other podcasts.
No,
To do this, but it's the UK. It's the time difference, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah. No, it's fine. I'm just glad we can make it work.
same.
This is very excited. I first heard about My Bloody Banjo. I first saw a poster for that about a year ago, I think. Does that feel right?
Yeah,
Um,
I think we so Graham Humphreys, which is a horror artist in England who's created posters like Evil Dead, Basket Case,
yeah,
some really popular, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge with the yellow school bus and Freddy on the top.
awesome.
He's the best, and so I commissioned him to do some new artwork. So I assume it could be that artwork that you're referring to.
Okay, so roughly right around there. But the Blu-ray itself, and now Eating Miss Campbell are the first two Blu-rays that you're going to be putting out. This has all happened in the last few months, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I've had a plan for this label, Refuse Films, for like a while, but I've just had to do a lot of research and to see what the practicalities are, and obviously the financial aspects of creating Blu-rays. But yeah, we so My Bloody Banjo that was released on April the 6th of this year,
Yeah.
and then Eating Miss Campbell we're looking at releasing, September.
Okay.
We're currently doing the festival run, and it's screened in France this past weekend, and prior to that, it's screened in Las Vegas. So, but we're coming to the end of that run, so now we're just preparing materials for the Blu-ray release.
That's so exciting. Congratulations on starting a new label. I
Thank
love
you.
it. And yeah, one of the questions I know people always have is just, are you going to be doing mostly films that you're involved with? Or are you going to be doing other people's films? Tell us a little bit about Refused Films. What's the vision for you?
Sure. So, I mean, the label was just initially created to release My Bloody Banjo, and then I just realized, okay, if you're able to release your movies domestically in the UK, then you've got like full control of how you sell them, and you can sell to the people that I don't want to call them fans, but the people that enjoy your movies. I've had history with other distributors before with My Bloody Banjo, and to me that was a learning curve. And I felt like, well, if anyone's going to put out a decent release, it's going to be the guy who made it. So that was
Mhm.
the original idea. And then, I have so many talented independent filmmaking friends from around the world, mostly in America. Um, and, you know, and I'm sure it's like this in the States. The physical media market is kind of dying when it comes to the mainstream, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. But as everyone knows, there's labels like Vinegar Syndrome, Severin Films, and over here we've got like H8 Films and Arrow Video. Those are like the two bigger ones. Um, I feel like there's this uprising of boutique labels, as they call them, and to me it's like the film collector is always the person to purchase and support physical media. And to me, there's not much representation here in the UK. Like, you do have H8 Films and Arrow Video, but I feel like they license films from more mainstream or established studios or established
Sure.
IPs. And I kind of wanted to, look at what's in the underground, and films that play fringe festivals or exclusively genre festivals, and give them a platform, and release them over in the UK. But obviously, yes, we're in the UK, this is the territory, but with the magic of the internet, you can sell worldwide. And much like Vinegar Syndrome, they're an American company, but they, everyone in the UK knows who Vinegar Syndrome is, and that's the beauty of the World Wide Web, I guess.
Oh yeah, and Reddit too, where everyone kind of goes
Oh
on and
yes.
just scrolls through to see what new companies are releasing. That's beautiful. I'm really happy. I feel like, okay, so when you tapped into something that we've spoken about before on the show, and other kind of podcasts that talk about physical media have mentioned this in some capacity as well. I think we're actually in a golden era for collectors. Because I've been collecting for about since about 2001 is when I bought my first DVD. And
Mhm.
they had the Anchor Bays and the Tartans, and they had these big companies that were just pushing out 100,000 copies of something or 50,000 copies of something. So you're right, we're not in there, but
No.
it feels like every week there's 7 first-time Blu-rays or first-time physical media or haven't seen since VHS or lost for 60 years. It just like my wallet can't take it. Like there's so much great stuff coming up.
It's yeah, it's excellent. And I'm a huge fan myself. I remember importing my first, well, my mom did it for me, imported my first DVD in 1997. This was way before I ever owned a DVD player. um, uh, and that was my first DVD that I owned was Tromeo and Juliet. It was one of the first 4 Trauma releases because Trauma was at the forefront of that technology, more so
Yeah.
than a lot of studios. And they would pack their discs with audio commentaries and deleted scenes and yada yada. And to me, that was like, setting a standard for DB for the format, but mostly the genre for the genre side of the format.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's I've always been a huge fan of physical media, and to me, there's an aesthetic and there's a certain appeal to it. It's that tangible thing that digital cannot give, and I feel like I'm pretty spoiled in a way now because there's so many options. Because being in the UK, our censorship is pretty, or was pretty brutal, which is why we had to import a lot of movies uncut because films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre were banned over here. The Exorcist was banned for the longest time.
Yeah.
So for us to see a lot of these genre movies uncut, you'd have to import them. But then, what's funny about that is, I remember I ordered. I must have been like 17. No, it was like 15, 16 because my parents ordered it. I ordered Cannibal the Musical, Trey Parker's first movie that Trauma
Yes.
put out.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
It it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And when I heard that Trauma was putting out the release, I was like, I need this. So they ordered it, and it didn't come for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, I had a letter through the mail to say that my item has been seized by customs. And I'm like, what
No.
the hell? Exactly. And they said it was because it was like inappropriate or, offensive. I forget the terminology, but like, obviously they just saw the word cannibal in the
Mm-hmm,
title
mm-hmm.
and just assumed. So I had to get my mom to like write to them and explain. Well, look, this has a BBFC certificate where you guys in America you have MPAA. Over here we
Yeah,
have the BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, and it passed the 18 rating over here, which is our highest rating.
yeah.
So they eventually sent me the DVD, but it felt like such a fight to justification to own this DVD. So to me, it's like now we live in a spoiled age because I could go on Diabolic DVD or Amazon or Orbit or wherever, and there's just a plethora of titles.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like you mentioned, just to reiterate your point, my wallet can't take it either, man. It's hard. It's hard to say no. It's like it's the fear of missing out, and like you mentioned as well, back in the days of Anchor Bay, they went and Tartan, which I love the Tartan label. They would replicate so many discs because
Yeah,
DVD was mainstream. But now, I mean, you see limited runs of maybe 5,000 or 2,000. And
yeah,
in my case, with My Bloody Banjo, we did 1,000, and that's mainly because of the financial capital that we have here at Refuse Films. Because really, it's just I still work a full-time job, so it's really just a hobby right now that I'd like to grow into a business. But but to me, it's like when it's more limited, I feel it makes the item more special.
oh
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah, and especially if it comes with a slipcover, as everybody knows. The only reason to own a Blu-ray is because there's a slipcover,
Uh-huh.
right?
You don't even need to watch it. You just have to have it up on your shelf.
Exactly, right, dude. I see slipcovers on eBay for like, man, like fucking $500,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even come with a goddamn film. It's just a piece of cardboard. But
No,
yeah, I
no,
do love it though.
the hobby's out of control, but in a fun way. I love that you talk about Cannibal the musical. So okay, just a quick story because I know this is not about me, but I was telling you before we joined that I went to go see Trauma Studios, right? 15 years ago now, whatever it was, 13 years ago. And one of the most exciting moments for me was I got a tour, and it was kind of funny because it was just this random intern. He was probably some
Mhm.
like 19-year-old kid, and he was outside smoking a cigarette, and I was like, oh, in my eyes, he's like one of my heroes, because he's
Yeah.
working with Lloyd and all them.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I get a tour? He was like, I don't think he'd ever been asked that before. He looked very confused. He was like, I mean, I guess, because it's just this old abandoned fire station, right? So we walk in, and the first thing you see is the garage where the fire truck would typically go. And it's just, it's a taller garage than usual, right? Because it needs to have a fire truck in it. And it's
Right.
wall to floor to ceiling, just like shit from all the different movies, like Poltergeist and
Hmm.
Romeo and Juliet, all the special effects. And then there's a little kind of in the back, there's like a bookshelf, and on top is a script, and just sitting there is the script for Cannibal the Musical. And I was like, "You have this script just like hanging
Wow.
out?" Yeah, and he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I got my picture with the script. um, yeah, they had the
Amazing. No,
crazy, right? It's like a living museum.
it is, and yet, dude, like you're completely right. I mean, when I visited Trauma, I usually try and go over like twice a year. But like you mentioned, there is everything. Like, I found filing cabinets full of like unproduced scripts.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, I remember. So there was a script for Toxic Avenger 4 before it was called Citizen Toxie. The working title was A Fistful of Toxies. So there's that draft down there. Toxic Avenger 2, the original title to that was Mr. Melvin, which is such
Oh,
a weird
wow.
name. I know. And then I found a script for Schlock and Schlockability that James Gunn, yeah, based on a story by James Gunn and Lloyd, the Revenge of Jane Austen. So, yeah, just to reiterate what your point was, there's everything down there. And dude, it's like to me, it was like a kid in a toy store because I've been into trauma since like 1996. So like when I was 11 years old, I was first introduced, and it's become, you know, a passion. And trauma. I love trauma, so much.
Well, that's a perfect segue. So you saw your first trauma film. Was it Romeo and Juliet?
It was no, it was Romeo and Juliet is my favorite trauma movie of all time, though. I think it's a masterpiece. But it was Toxic Avenger Part 2 was the
Okay.
first ever trauma film I saw. And what's really funny is, Lloyd tells these stories about how Blockbuster were like, with the devil and they would blacklist trauma. But funnily enough, I found an ex rental VHS of Toxic Avenger 2 in a Blockbuster video.
Uh,
So this was like 1996, and around that time, Trauma was kind of like having their like Trauma UK boom. Like,
okay.
they had like TVs, they had seasons on TV of something called the Trauma Basement, which is kind of like a 10-minute wraparound where they would show a trauma movie. And they would start releasing VHSs over here. So I noticed obviously Toxie on the cover from Toxic Crusaders, the animated TV show. And I was 11 years old, but over here in the UK, we have like British sitcoms like The Young Ones and Bottom, and Rick Mayall and that. And so we all grow up on like slapstick violence and comedy.
Yeah.
So when I watched Toxic Avenger Part 2, I was like, wow, this is like everything I love. Just violence, silly violence, satire, and the comedy. And to me, it was like kind of a calling in a way. It's like, wow, if these guys can make films like this, then maybe I could make a movie one day. Because I always wanted to be a filmmaker, but to me, Trauma really is the studio that said that, hey, if we can do it, you can do it. So, my Trauma love grew for many years. And then in 2012, Lloyd mentioned that he was shooting Return to Nukem High that summer. And growing up with the DVD format, as I'm sure you know, Chris, that
Yeah.
on these a lot of the trauma discs, well, Terra Firma, Citizen Toxie, and Poltergeist, that have these feature-length documentaries about
Mhm.
the making of trauma movies. And, it's very like warts and all. Like, it's not like a pandering pat ourselves on the back saying, wow, yeah, it was great to work with this person, it's great to work with that person. It just shows how hard an independent film is.
Yeah.
And because of that, my dream's always been to work on a trauma movie, but I'm just a guy in the UK. It's like that is like to me a dream. But I was 26 at the time, and I jumped on a plane and I flew to Buffalo, New York, and I didn't know anybody apart from Lloyd, who I met at a few conventions over here in the UK. And I slept on the floor of an abandoned funeral home in Buffalo, Niagara, and we filmed Return to Nukem High. And I met lifelong friends on that production, and I still have a connection to trauma to this day. So yeah, it's I'm certainly living the dream, and I'm sure 11-year-old Liam would be so proud.
I love that. Wait, so you went to Buffalo without knowing that you were going to be on the set? You just went hoping that they would, or you
Oh no,
already?
sorry, no. Oh no, so okay, so Lloyd said he was making another movie that
Yeah,
year, and
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just, and it was going to be in Buffalo, and I just thought I'd just jump on a plane on my own, go there, not knowing anybody, and help out on a movie. So yeah, I knew the movie
Amazing.
was happening, but like, for me at that age, I guess I never really traveled anywhere on my own, so it was like a big kind of like I don't know, like leap of faith in a way. Like I felt
Yeah.
like this is my calling. I have to do this now.
Well,
And
and so you just rolled onto the set and said, "Hey, I'd like to help," and they said, "Okay, come on in."
yeah, dude, pretty much, yeah, man.
Oh my
And
God.
I slept on the floor of a funeral home because we had an abandoned funeral home where the cast and crew stayed at.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was like I think like 60 or 70 people there and one shower. So dude, it was certainly like how trauma shows in their documentaries. It's very much kind of like it's a huge team effort, and independent films are hard. But dude, I had the greatest time, and I learned. So, if anything, that was my film school, so that
Yeah, sure.
when I shot My Bloody Banjo a couple of years later, I learned a lot from trauma, and My Bloody Banjo is pretty much my first movie, a love letter to trauma.
Love that. Wow. What an amazing story. And that's, this is what I love about the community of independent filmmaking, right? Is when you find other people that are like-minded, it's like kind of an instant brotherhood or sisterhood. You just kind of jump in and I don't know, it's easy to fit in.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I certainly found my family over there because, like, over here in the UK, people are into football. People are into like the drinking culture. It's everything
Uh-huh.
that the Americans think that the British are. I have good teeth though, but the British are having really bad teeth. But I have good teeth. But but like so, like the majority of people I speak to online to this day are all American people because they and trauma people as well, they just get it, they just understand it. And yeah, it's like the term, you find your tribe, and that's exactly what happened when I flew over there.
Amazing. Well, thanks for the background. I knew you had a connection to trauma. That's an amazing story.
Thank you.
So that's also a great segue into My Bloody Banjo. So for those they see the slipcover and then it looks nice and they're debating whether or not to buy it. What is kind of you mentioned it's a love letter to trauma. Tell us a little bit more about My Bloody Banjo.
Sure.
What are people expecting?
Sure, yeah. Well, so to just give a bit of a backstory, in 2011, before I flew over to Trauma, I flew over to Trauma in 2012. In 2011, I had a sexual accident with my ex-girlfriend, and I snapped the banjo string on my penis. So the medical term for that is called a frenulum. And essentially, when I snapped that string, I was, bleeding, and it was kind of fucked up at the time.
Yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, but I thought, you know what, what happened there may make for a good idea for a horror film. So over the years, the idea was stewing, and then when I returned from Buffalo, Niagara, from Return to Nukem High, in 2012, I made a short film called Banjo with a few friends, and it played a few film festivals. And I just decided, what would be really stupid would be to make a feature length version of this movie. So I wrote a feature length script based on a sexual accident I had a couple of years prior, which I just found was hilarious. And we filmed it in the summer of 2014. It was the first movie I've ever directed. I've directed short films before, and I studied film in college. But this was like a huge leap of faith. People usually work on short films for maybe 5, 10 years to try and then get funding. I was working like 16-hour shifts at my day job, and that's like
Okay.
technical support for broadband. So I was like
Okay.
working all this like overtime to save up to shoot the movie. And we shot it for like maybe £15,000, which is
Wow.
probably, yeah, I think that's like
Twenty
maybe
thousand
$12,000.
dollars.
Yeah, 20,
Oh,
yeah, 20, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Depending what the currency is. I think the currency is kind of shit right now for us over here.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like a micro budget film, as they call it, right?
Wow.
So we shot that for 22 days, and I was very green at the time. I was still learning, but it we took it to Cannes Film Festival the following year, and no one bought it. It kind of failed in the market screenings, but it started to play film festivals. So it had its world premiere at Fright Fest in Leicester Square, which is a huge genre film festival.
Yeah.
And it played festivals in America, and it had a really good festival run. It was getting some attention, and then I guess I expected for DVD companies or distributors, should we say, to give me a healthy advance for the movie. And I guess like no one knew how to market it. And, Trauma, Lloyd said to me, Liam would love to put out My Bloody Banjo, but there's no, if you can find money elsewhere, go for it. So I went with a company that promised me that they would, put it in Walmart, that they would, do a really good job on the DVD. So like this was
Oh,
like 2015. This was 2015. So
okay.
I got all the deliverables together, as they call them. So I recorded audio commentaries, deleted scenes, I
Uh-huh.
gave them everything I would have seen in a DVD release, and then all of a sudden, after I signed the contract, they censored the movie for the genital mutilation scenes. They decided not to use any of the extra features, and they popped it on this thing called Amazon Made on Demand. If you've heard of that, it used to be a service
I
a
do. I
couple
do
of
know it.
years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah, so essentially what they do is, if you want a movie, they'll
Press
burn it
it.
on a DVD-R. Yeah, and just send it off. So to me, it wasn't a real DVD, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
everything. So that really put me in a funk, man. That really put me in a depressive state, because I came into this kind of just wanting to tell a story and make a movie because I love movies, but I never really learned the business side of things.
Yeah,
And to
yeah.
me, I needed that to fail. I needed to fail to, now we're here with My Bloody Banjo, and it's got a new leash on life. But I don't think I would have got that if everything went well with this distributor. So if anything, it was a blessing in disguise. And so yeah, I think that answers that question, I guess.
That's no, it does completely. That's amazing. Thank you. And I'm
Oh, of
totally
course.
sold on the movie. Uh it's interesting how I think there's such an overlap in I spent a lot of my career in startups and kind of tech startups before
Mhm.
I joined a bigger company that I'm working at now. And this entrepreneurial story is full of so much heartache.
Yes,
And it's just, yeah, I wish there's a way to protect people from it. But like you said, in a way, it was a blessing in disguise. I think you do learn from it, right? And you learn who you are and what you want.
of course. Yeah. And the same with filmmaking as well. Filmmaking is so hard. And, you do like, there's certain times you can't meet a schedule, or there's certain times you've got budgeting issues, or there's issues with actors or locations. And to me, it's all like problem solving. That's all
Yeah.
filmmaking is. It's like babysitting and problem solving, I call it. You just got to be a good people person, and to me, just be a good person, just be a genuine person, and people will want to help you. But on the distribution side of things, also, especially for indie films, an independent filmmaker, they don't get into this to make loads of money, because if they do, then they'd probably be better off making a much more accessible movie than My Bloody Banjo, or work somewhere else if they really want to make money. So to me, it's more of an artist-driven industry
Yeah.
on the indie scene, the micro budget scene, at least, anyway. So when it gets to that point of, okay, it's done the festival run, which is perfect for this kind of film, but how do we get it out on home video? How do we get it out on Blu-ray and DVD? there's companies out there that just want products. And to me, film isn't a product. And I
Yeah,
feel like some people treat it as such because really all they want, a lot of these companies that screw over the filmmakers, and it's not so much that they screw over the filmmakers, it's that they fill them with false promises, and then they just kind of, because to them, they just want a title that they can take to film markets and sell to international territories. So, for
right.
example, they'll say, "Hey, we've got a package of 50 horror films here or action films. We'll take these for like 50 grand." And then what they'll do is they'll bury you in fabricated expenses. So if I get a sales report for My Bloody Banjo from from one of the old distributors, they say that they've spent, I don't know, 30 grand on marketing fees and lab fees and loads of bullshit, really, if I'm being
Wow,
completely honest with
interesting.
you. So that what they do is that they keep the profit that they've made from selling it to other territories, and you don't see anything. So even though My Bloody Banjo was came out in 2016 in America, it's now 2023, and I've still made zero money off that movie from that distributor, even though it's made money for them because I'm still, being buried in these expenses that are complete fabrications. So because of that,
Shady stuff.
yeah, I had to purchase back my UK rights to My Bloody Banjo because the rights don't expire because I signed a 10-year license to this company. So I bought the UK rights back in 2017 with the sole intention of, putting it out on Blu-ray
Uh-huh.
and one, just doing the film justice, but also to recoup my investment. Because you do need to have a business mind. I mean, that's why they call it the film business. To me, that's two
Right.
words. I'm all about the film, but to me, all filmmakers should also learn, okay, who is the audience for this, and how can I get it to that audience? Because at the end of the day, I want to put out a really good product. Well, I've said the word product there, but like when it comes to DVD, Blu-ray, it is a product, but to me, the film is the soul of the filmmaker. So if you're going to put that, you want to give the best. I think a better word for product would be presentation. You want to
Yeah.
put out the best presentation, and also because I'm a huge fan. What would I want on a disc? Because to me, like audio commentaries and behind the scenes documentaries, that's what kind of inspired me to become a filmmaker as well. So yeah, it's great to hear when people take ownership of things and turn a negative into a positive, and that's what I'm trying to do here with Refused Films. And hopefully, like I say, it's still early days. It's just a hobby. It's not my bread and butter right now at all. Like I say, I work night shifts in a technical support job, but I'd like to think we can grow a library and sell to lovers of independent cinema.
God, that's such a great story. I can't, I hope that happens for you because it's really awesome what you're doing. There's a I'm just there's one question I want to ask, but before I get to the question about what's next for you, that just this is my favorite thing, kind of going back to Lloyd for just 1 second.
Yeah,
I
please.
my first signature from him was probably 2001. I had a copy of Blades that I took out and got signed when he was coming through town. And I remember I just had a few seconds with him, but I remember reading his book, How to Make Your Own Damn Movie, and just being so impressed with the business side of him because the movies speak for themselves. You kind of either like them or you don't. There's no real way to force somebody to like um, Terra Firma. They're either gonna like that or not, depending on their personality. I love it, but you can't,
Yeah.
that's just, it's divisive, I guess, whatever. But he's always struck me as somebody who's a businessman first. Like you talked about being on the cutting edge of DVD, being on the cutting edge of Blu-ray, having a streaming channel. I remember back in, I don't know, God, 2003, 4, you could go on and watch women dance around and mud wrestle and oil wrestle and stuff on Troma TV. And it was just like, but I mean, he jumped in early to everything. And then now he sells NFTs. It's hilarious. Like the guy's just, he never stops. Like, um, I've always, anyways, that's just one more point of Troma love. That's always been
Oh,
impressive.
it's so inspiring. And I think also why, just what you mentioned there about Lloyd, I think he's probably one of the only filmmakers that own his own negatives.
Mm,
So when he created Trauma Team Video in 1995, he saw like so in the 80s they had these big companies like Bestron and even
yeah,
Warner Brothers. They would license trauma movies. Well, not so much license. They would give trauma a big healthy advance because back in the 80s they needed titles for the video store.
yeah,
They needed back then they'd probably get like 3 million in advance for a Toxic Avenger movie, like a Toxic Avenger sequel. And they were smart enough to split the movies into two, and pick up two big advances with Toxic 2 and Toxic 3. But come the mid 90s, that era was kind of dying down. And Lloyd and Michael knew, hey, we need to self distribute. And because they own all their own negatives and everything, they created Trauma Team Video and they started self distributing. And to me, that was one of the most inspiring things because they were able to market the films as a library of, because to me, it's the trauma brand, kind of like in a way,
yeah,
Vinegar Syndrome. So, Vinegar Syndrome, they license movies from everywhere, but people don't really talk about the companies that make these films. They talk about Vinegar Syndrome. And
right.
that's how kind of like how people talk about trauma. So, for example, Vinegar Syndrome can put out a trauma title, but people would rather buy the Vinegar Syndrome version than the trauma version, and it's because of the brand of excellence, I guess, that Vinegar Syndrome have when it comes to physical media. And the same thing about trauma. When you go into a trauma movie, you expect certain things.
Yeah,
And to me, this is why it's like kind of a musical. It's a trip-hack film, but it's a trauma movie. It has
right.
certain tropes in there that, and to me, it's that idea of creating a library of films with a vision. And that's also what I kind of want to do. So, if anything, even on the self-distribution side, I've always found that to be very, inspiring. And that's something, I'm kind of replicating right here. Like, I'll distribute my own movies in the UK, but if there's a bigger company elsewhere that want to license them for that territory, I'm open to negotiations because then that, to me, that's the business side. You're making a bit of money, but then another side of the world's probably going to discover your film that they wouldn't normally, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And that's a perfect segue. You're seems like you're on my script here, which is fantastic. You're reading my mind here. So that's a perfect segue into one of my other questions I had. So you are going to distribute other independent filmmakers' films, which is
That's right.
fantastic. Can you talk at all about what's coming up? How much of that is secret?
For sure. No, 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 no. Oh,
Great.
so there's a movie called The Secret of Cook Island
Okay.
by Reeves Elliott, who I've worked with before. Reeves works on the Joe Bob Show, The Last Drive-In, and he's worked on a few trauma productions. So I'll be putting that out. There's another movie called I Need You Dead that played a few festivals in the US. It's kind of like a Henenlotter kind of neo retro fever dream. It's a really cool movie called I Need You Dead. Um, Children of Sin is another one that I'll be putting out, and a few retro titles like the punk rock Holocaust movies from the early 2000s. I have the rights to,
Okay.
and I'm trying to think what else. Bubble Gum, which is a new movie, I'll be putting out. So yeah, so there's quite a list of titles. In fact, if people just Google Refused Films, it'll come up with an IMDb listing of films distributed by Refused Films, and I've added quite a few to that listing, that catalog. But also refusedfilms.com. We're still building the website, but there is currently, links to a big cartel where we're selling My Bloody Banjo, and you can pre-order Eating Miss Campbell. Eating Miss Campbell is kind of like a sequel to My Bloody Banjo. So if you want to know what's happening in Eating Miss Campbell, always best to check out My Bloody Banjo first. But yeah, so we're still in early days. I have someone trying to create refusedfilms.com website, and I'd love to license more movies. Films with a cutting edge. It's funny because Eating Miss Campbell, it had its world premiere last summer at Fright Fest in Leicester Square. Sold out 300 people on a Friday night. It was spectacular. I was
Okay.
crying when I got on stage.
Amazing.
Because Yeah, because I never thought I'd make another movie after My Bloody Banjo because the distribution for that film was so bad, and I lost all my money. It took me a long time to make a second film. So to me, I was just so overwhelmed, like because I all I want to do is make films and tell stories, and to me, to have the to have the option to make a second movie by saving money and just working really hard, it was like a culmination of so many things. Um, oh yes, sorry, I was thinking, where am I going with this story? I know where I'm going with
No,
this story.
it's great.
So it played, and then like the next morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, I'll check out the reviews. And much like trauma, as you know, Chris, you either love a trauma movie, or you hate trauma movies. And so I woke up because Eat Miss Campbell is a trauma film. It's produced by Lloyd Kaufman, and they own the US rights, and I own the UK territory rights. So reading the reviews, I read one review, and it had three words, and it was repugnant, childish filmmaking. And I guess I decided to take those words and call it repugnant underground filmmaking. And to me, that's what Refused
uh,
Films is. So anything with cutting edge, with something to say, those are the kind of movies I want to put out for that label.
well, one of my favorite things on Refused Films website is the reviews that are there for Eating Miss Campbell. Um, you just instantly feel the community of people that get it, like you can tell the people
Oh,
that get it.
totally, no, without a doubt. Like, people either get it or they don't, and that's fantastic as well because it's all subjective. There's no right or wrong opinions. It's nice to like hear like a variety of opinions, but it always warms the soul when you know that something that you've created yourself, you're able to entertain somebody else. Because when I was a kid, I didn't really have many friends, and I was bullied just like every other horror fan growing up story, right? We're all outsiders. But to me, films were a great escapism, and I love just coming home from school and sticking on a trauma movie, be it like Frostbite or Wrath of Wendigo or Rabid Grannies or Serve Nazis Must Die or Combat Shock or Bloodsucking Freaks or Chill. The titles go on and on. But
Love
like
it.
to me, I love those movies to death, and they really embody the spirit of what I want to be as a filmmaker and the kind of films I want to make. And like you mentioned, Lloyd's like the greatest guy, and Trauma is the oldest independent film studio. 50 years next year, 50 years, and it's fantastic. And to me, in this age of IP and big conglomerates and like just this mass media of content, because it's not really art, it is content. It's nice that there's independent voices out there that have been inspired by trauma, kind of carrying the torch. I'd like to think I'm one of them, and there's many more out there. And I just hope that we can all keep telling our stories. And to me, boutique Blu-ray labels and self distribution is the way to do that.
I love it.
So
That's so inspiring to think of Lloyd inspiring another generation of filmmakers to come up and say, no, 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 this is the right way to do it. I get to tell my story. Um,
exactly, or as Lloyd would say, make your own damn movie.
yeah, I love it. One of my favorite behind the scenes scenes, I don't know why this stands out to me so much, was when they showed how they did one of the head smashes in Romeo and Juliet. And right
Mhm.
before the head smash, they cut to a watermelon with a smiley face on it. And I just love it, man. Like you said, it's that silly sense of humor. And so I will absolutely be watching My Bloody Banjo, and I'll put up. I can already tell I'm gonna love it, and I'll pre-order Eating Miss Campbell. You have so there's going to be two movies coming out this year on the label.
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
that going to be about? Because I know it's very expensive to produce a Blu-ray. So
Yeah.
is it going to be about two a year for a while? Is that the cadence you're going to be doing?
No, no, not at all. So I'm hoping from January. So we're just prepping things right now, but I'm hoping from January we're going to be releasing 3 films per quarter.
Okay.
We just so we're just putting the foundations in there because, as you say, it's pretty expensive. I mean, I'd love to tell you like how much. I mean, would you mind if I go through the business side of it very
Are you
quickly? I think it
kidding?
might
I
be
think I think
interesting.
people would love it. Yeah, no.
Yeah, of course. No, I kind of find that side of it really interesting too. So, okay, so for example, My Bloody Banjo, 1,000 units. Okay, So with that, you need to pay something called an AACS license to Sony because Sony owns the Blu-ray technology, I guess. So with that, so
Oh
you've got to
yeah.
pay a fee for that first of all, and then you need to have the disc authored. But so all in all, 1,000 units, the license and the authoring, it for My Bloody Banjo, it costs something like £4,400 to 5,000, which
Wow. Okay.
it's not. It's a lot of money up front, a lot of money up front. But you know, if a Blu-ray costs £4.40 a unit to buy, for example, and you're selling it at £25 or £30 or $25, $30, that's a good markup. It's a really good, and especially if you own the movie. So if you're self-distributing your own movie, you're not having to do a profit share with another filmmaker. And then again, it's like it's great to do that because even the filmmakers that have already signed to refuse films for their movies, there's a profit share involved. But also, I'm going to give them maybe 100 and 200 discs so that they can sell their movies at full cost. I'm not going to charge them for it. And to me, I think that makes it fair because the filmmakers have put all their money into making movies. The
Right.
least you can do as a distributor is give them at least 200 units to sell full price and for them not to have any cost involved in that. So to
That's
me,
cool.
I think it is. I think it is. And to me, by doing that, then the filmmaker can then make money to hopefully make more films and then maybe get a bigger deal elsewhere. Because even though we're just an indie label, the one thing I've learned is to be upfront with people because I know what the feeling's like when, like with My Bloody Banjo with another company, when someone lies to you and they get you to sign something and then they change their mind, there's nothing more soul destroying because it's kind of like, I'm not married, I don't have any kids, but I feel like the two films I've made are my kids in a way because I've spent so much like time nurturing it from birth, from the script process to,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
a weird,
Yeah.
it's a weird analogy, but
Well,
yeah.
there's something in the editing room too where you kind of see this thing come to life, right?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, to me, they always say there's three versions of the movie. It's the movie you write, it's the movie you shoot, and then the movie you edit. And to me, people say Star Wars was made in the edit, and it's so true. That's where the magic happens is in the edit, because you see the film that the story that you're telling more concise because you see it right there and then.
Yeah.
So yeah, completely. It's and to be in at every stage, and now obviously I'm doing marketing and distribution. It's great to learn every other aspect, and I'm still learning. Obviously, there's so much I fail on, etc. But to me, that's a great way to grow. If you feel like you know everything, then I find that's an arrogant stance. But also, you may as well retire because
Yeah.
to me, this whole thing is getting better with everything.
Wow.
So
No,
so my dream is if I'm able to quit my current job and distribute films full time, that would be fantastic. And then if I'm able to make my own movie or get hired to direct a movie maybe once or twice or once every couple of years because these films they take a long time to make to be made and to put together. But if I'm able to do that, that would be the absolute dream. That's my kind of aspiration in a way. So and if anybody out there listening, if they want more information or advice on putting out their own movies or self-distribution or filmmaking in general, you can email me at refusefilms@gmail.com. Or just go to refusefilms.com. My email's on there. I'll be more than happy to help because uh, when I started out, I felt like a lot of filmmakers, and this is my opinion in England, the independent filmmakers, they were afraid to admit that they failed, and they didn't want to
mm,
share those stories, and they wanted this perception that I'm a filmmaker and I do this. And to me, that can harm a lot of people because they're going in blind thinking, I've just made a movie. I'm probably going to get the 30 grand back from a sales agent or distributor. That
right.
doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anyone wants, I mean, if it does, fantastic, that's great. But, to me, it's also a cautionary tale that should be told. So, yeah, anyone out there, if you want to speak film or whatever, please feel free to get in contact with me. I'm pretty easy to find online. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or give you advice and let you know the mistakes I made so then you don't make those same mistakes.
Oh, that's awesome. What an offer. I hope people take you up on it.
Me,
And I hope that we see a Liam Regan film in the DCU now that James Gunn has taken over uh, that
I mean,
universe.
well, what I mean, it's great that a guy that started off making films about incest and kinky sex and body piercing and mutations is now the head is like one of the most powerfulest people in Hollywood. I
It's
mean, it's
amazing.
fantastic. It's great, and
Yeah,
and he's not, he's proud of his trauma roots. Him and Lloyd are still friends. I mean, Lloyd was at his wedding a few months ago, oh, maybe last year, when he married the I forget, the girl from Peacemaker.
that's
I don't know,
awesome.
but
Yeah,
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 he's cool. He's cool, and and also Lloyd cameos in Guardians. I saw him in Volume 1, and I've just seen
yeah,
Volume 3, and is in that. And I'm not a big fan of comic book movies or anything, but to me, those films, the Guardians films, they're James Gunn films first,
exactly.
and then a Marvel film second. So.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I was just talking. So there's a guy in North Carolina named Will Dodson. If I don't know if you've seen him on some YouTube channels and stuff, but he's a rhetoric professor and a film studies and media studies professor. And we just got to talking about the roots of storytelling. And
Mhm.
we spent most of the time talking about Jim Wynorski movies and trauma movies.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
like these are their stories. And I think the difference between telling Eating Miss Campbell and telling a DC story is that Eating Miss Campbell probably has more heart to it because at the end of the day, it's a personal story, whereas that's you just can't tell as personal of a story at that stage, right? And so I think you yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, there is a difference with like the studio system and independent filmmaker, where with the studio system, you've got a committee of producers, so it's like a
Right.
movie made by a committee, and there's so much money involved, and usually it's an IP, it's a brand as they call it, that you put this title on the marquee or whatever, and people will come. So they have to make a film that appeals to everybody, that doesn't offend anybody, and is pretty much cookie cutter that anyone can digest. And
Right.
don't get me wrong, I grew up watching the summer blockbuster. We all did. But I feel these days it feels so sanitized, and it feels so polished, and feels so manufactured is probably the word I'm going for. So that then, they will hire directors that, Tarantino, you go see a Tarantino film, it's bankable. They'll give a trust there to Tarantino. Same with Nolan and James Gunn. They hired James Gunn because he knows how to write characters. And
Yeah.
to me, my appeal to Romeo and Juliet being my favorite movie is how he told that story with those characters. And every
Yeah.
single film you've seen that directed by James Gunn, that's just James Gunn. That's just James Gunn right there. But with an independent film, for example, because I'm the writer, director, and producer, and the investor of, let's say, Eaton Miss Campbell on My Blue Banjo, I'm able to tell the story how exactly as I want it,
Yeah.
but also I take like if someone's got a great opinion, like the editor or whatever, I'll take that on board because it's great to see it from other people's perspective. But at the end of the day, it lies with you, the director. So if the film fails or if it's a success, then it's on your shoulders. Especially, and that's a good and bad thing. It really is. With a movie, with a studio movie, sorry, all they care is about opening weekend. The movie doesn't make what Box Office Mojo projects, is this projection. Oh, if it doesn't make 80 million, it's a failure. Like, in what world do we live in that 80 million is a failure? It's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
And
Right.
it's
Right.
sad. Yeah, and it's sad because I'm sounding old now. I'm 37, but back in the day, in the 80s and the 90s, you'd have a smaller budget movie, which was like maybe, I don't know, a couple of million, and then you'd have a big budget. But big budget back then was like 30 million, maybe 40 million. And now, there's no middle ground anymore. So you're
Yeah.
either going to do micro budget, or you've got to do 500 million blockbusters, and then you've got to get a return on that. And and to me, I just feel like the art of just making a low budget movie is kind of lost now, because Hollywood doesn't really, there's no market for that, unless it's kind of like, A24, for example. A24, they're kind of doing what Miramax did in the 90s. So a
Yeah.
Miramax movie, they would say, oh, this is an independent film, but really but really it's funded by Disney. So, and A24, they are it's $1 billion company, but they have this aesthetic of, we're in indie, which is a good thing. Is different from the studio films, but at the same time, I think it confuses people to expect what an independent film is, because
Right.
the audience for like an A24 movie, or just movies in general, they're not necessarily the same audience for a genre micro budget film. And
Yeah.
even though the two things are the same, the motion pictures telling a story with actors and a score, they are the same. They're also very different, you know. Where I can understand people hating Eating Miss Campbell because it deals with socio-political satire. It deals with like school shootings. It deals with um, sexual, sorry, like the Weinstein scandal, Me Too scandal. Sexual abuse, power.
Hmm.
It deals with that kind of stuff, and it satirizes. It's a satire, and it's also a British guy having a commentary on American gun culture. But who better to tell a story like that but a British guy? like an outsider's perspective, but but then like I can understand a distributor not wanting to put that out because it's quite offensive, but at the same time, a genre audience like me and you will understand the context what it's trying to say. And I think a lot of people, they just they're used to the cookie cutter studio films, and they take whatever is said on the surface, but don't understand the nuance.
Subtext.
And that's
Yeah,
what I love
yeah.
about Trauma. Like Trauma, it's very slapstick and gory and sexual, and everything else on the surface, but they all deal with themes. They're all trying to say something,
Sure.
right? And to me, that's what makes Trauma films very smart in a way, and very, they had the moniker for the longest time, Trauma movies of the future. And it's so true. It truly is. They've always been at the forefront. And to me, 50 years is such an achievement. It really is.
That's amazing. And I can't wait to talk about refused films in 50 years. Um, well, Liam, you've been an incredible guest. I think just that's most of the questions I had. I think that's a fantastic introduction to you as a person, a filmmaker, and a label owner. Um, Anything that you want to plug right at the end here to make sure people, obviously refusefilms.com. Anything else you want to make sure they know about you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you want to just follow our social media pages like Facebook's at Refuse Films, or Instagram or Twitter, it's pretty easy. They're all on the website. But yeah, like I say, if anyone has any questions, feel free to get in contact. I'm very accessible, and I'm more than happy to share the wealth of knowledge. And so yeah, seriously, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and thank you, Chris, for inviting me on here. And I've had a great time, and physical media for life.
Awesome. What a perfect ending. Thanks, Liam.